question. She's like, that makes sense. Some are comments, you know what I mean? They don't always need to be. And I do apologize if gotta write this stuff. That's true. Gus Ogg says you don't own the car when you register it. You sign over to them. You're just a keeper and hold every bit of responsibility, which is
all right.
true.
Let's back up to this. Color of law, color of operation, and fraud has no statute of limitations. The owners of the United States Corporation Company, via members of the Roman Curia, most of whom are foreign Europeans pretending to be Americans and operating as governors of the corporate states, have, unbeknownst to the people, wrongfully, fraudulently, deceptively, and criminally claimed the original manufacturer's titles of origin. Those of you who are on this call, write this down. Original manufacturer's titles of origin, and have not told the people that they have stolen the people's private property that they have earned by their labor, etc., and then have used those original titles to back their own private corporate debt and issue to the people fraudulently certificates of title, which are not titles to those vessels, etc., and have falsely had people register their private property to their private corporate state, and they have used it as surety to back their private debt. Now, you tell me, tell your family members that the people who've been going to car dealerships, used or new, were told that when they so-called purchased the car. They were not. So what you should be talking about is the criminality of these governors, secretaries of state, all pseudo dead offices who have been robbing the people's estate to back their private debt and transferring the finance to outside flush funds or slush funds in other countries, etc., for themselves. And that includes the congressmen and the senators, who all know that platform of operation is a fraud. And then they tell people the vehicle or the vessel doesn't belong to them. Yeah, right. It's called fraud. And fraud has no statute of limitation. And any injury coming to the people, you need to look at these congressmen and senators who are pocketing your estate behind your back.
Okay, Aduke says companies are beginning to mandate the V, and if you don't get it, you're fired. What is your take on it?
They're coming open with their dumb diverses and their unum sanctum operations. This is back to what I said before. It's in your face now. And people like Taharka and others can be telling you that I've been lying to you. Now they're showing you. Because these are the people who they really support, who've been in the background, been paying them. And the rest of the trolls at your expense. You can decide what you want to do. They've been having you going to other countries warring, haven't they? But they've gone unscathed, haven't they? Mm-hmm.
Kevin Reese said they are Americans. It said you said they are Americans, but if Latin Americans are white enough, they can get dual citizenship to
White
Spain.
is a tag. Let's get this. Do not mix social engineering paradigms and nom de guerre with the truth of pedigree. Mexican is not a color. The color code system is a social engineering paradigm. Don't mix the two. For those who are not able to grow up yet and are still in the state of juvenile minds, keep in mind that human beings, hominidae, universal, at Midgard, are known by nations and nationalities not by crayon colors. So if we're talking to 2-year-olds, then we have to explain it to them. But if any of you are past 10 years old, we shouldn't have to be going through this by now. You should grow up.
Christopher White says, is Great Britain in control over these lands? If so, how? And are they Moors too?
Now, when you have Britannia, you have the original Europeans, that would be the Picts, the Moors, and many of them have been genocided out, and you have hybrids who have taken over. However, in harmony with what your question and statement is, United States Corporation and Canada Corporation, having the same international number, are corporate possessions of the Queen of England, i.e., and the members of the Circle Church and Chancery on Fleet Street, England, known as the Crown, distinguished from the aggregate land. And they have been controlling the land through fraud by pretext of being a country. This must be corrected by you, i.e. the people of the land, making right of claim of your estate. And some of these subjects that we have went through, including the clarification that the United States is not a country, it's a private corporation that's bankrupt, we must make that clear among our people, because that's part of the corruption and why some of these things are not comprehended properly by the people, because they don't get it, that the United States is not a country. Never was. And I know for a lot of people, this information is uncomfortable because we've all operated within the venues of these frauds. However, as the truth has come out, it's up to us to start doing what? Starting to fix this thing and coming back into the constitutional fold of government. Those are metaphysical abstracts, not just those instruments.
Okay. Cheryl Jameson asked, what do you feel about the med beds can cure everything, I guess asking.
I wouldn't say everything, but in general, keep in mind all of those things and vibrations and sound, etc., and light, etc., are old ancient technologies that has been held back from the masses because the priesthood has been making the people sick, then profiting from it, then killing the people, then having the people pay for dying. And it has been literally a business, which is part of the reason we're talking about awareness of constitutional principles, etc. However, it is indeed true that med beds, or what they're calling med beds, is presently available, and also that is old technology. And part of that and other operations will be brought into being. And also the fact that with your dedicated work, and that's all of you, in spite of the trolls that come on here, to keep a positive mind so that the restoration of those principles that supersede the adoption of the Constitution, i.e., from the ancient moral and ethical principles of our forefathers, that our people no longer shall be burdened after this year with private property taxes that have been unlawfully put upon them, and they themselves being falsely and wrongly classified as taxable property, which is much of the injury that has come to our people and has been allowing the fake, foreign, alien, hybrid Europeans to gentrify our neighborhoods while getting wealthy at the expense of our people and breaking up of our families. So keep that in mind, keep a positive mind, projecting that the property tax fraud will be exposed to the masses these coming months, and that the people will rise up and reject these people who have been falsely impersonating as government and have been robbing them in the name of property tax. And that's just one aspect aside from med beds. but it is up to us as the people collectively. And keep this in mind. If you really pay attention to a lot of statements that some of our people make, they're still looking for a sacrificial lamb. That's not going to happen in this Aquarian light. You will take responsibility and bear your own cross. However, it's in our interest to come together in moral and ethical principle to restore constitutional essence on the land. And that is political and metaphysical.
This question has not come up, but specifically, I just see something about the UN. But what do you think about the prospect of UN forces in on this land, and if it does happen, what does that mean?
What it does mean is that the UN is really a private army for the members of the Roman Curia, also known as the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, etc. And their missionary work is actually genocide and not to help the people. That's the truth. Even though many statements that have been made by them are rooted in a moral invitation, if you get the point, or certain true statements that appear to be helpful to the people, but in fact, they're really a private army. And you don't want them.
So does it look like that might happen, or is that just a
well? That's
empty
part
threats?
of that's part of the intention. But I think people kind of sense that a man who was placed in office, part of his assignment was to see that doesn't happen with a lot of other people from around the world, not just here at North America, because what is presented to the world now has more to do with the nations of the earth and not just the operations at the Maghreb under U.S. corporation jurisdiction at North America and at Canada. It's not limited here, although you will see a lot of the eyes or the lights or the neon sign is placed at North America. The things that are taking place at North America are presented and representative of things that are taking place in almost every nation at Midgard. And the addressing of these issues is more universal now than it ever has been. But keep in mind, the UN is a private army for the popes of Rome and the Rockefellers. So any questions about them, take that in consideration, because that's a fact. And everywhere they've gone, they have never helped the people. They've always robbed them and undermined the divine sovereign right of people. Now, that's a fact. However, that is part and has been part of their operative plan and is in operation. However, it's being interrupted because the nations of the earth have ceased buying U.S. Treasury bonds, which has actually been backing them, because actually they're arms of the same entity. And as an example, part of the last large area of economic funding under the control of the United States corporation has been the government employees retirement fund. The congressmen and the senators have already robbed that. That's gone. It's another reason why they keep poisoning the people with toxins, etc., and why they want to do the V to everyone, etc., and inject into their crystal stream so they can control them, also with graphene and other nanobots, etc. However, the nations of the earth are no longer buying U.S. Treasury bonds, so shortly, even though they've been covering it up, the stock market is crashing as we speak. And the different branches of the different banks will absolutely start killing all of your credit cards. So as you can see, things will be happening so fast that the people will no longer be able to deny what we've been telling them for years. And also people like Tarik and others will find themselves not comfortable with the people finding out that most of them are agents for the hybrid Europeans. And you won't have to wait long for that because they will expose themselves.
Trying to get past questions and comments that they're having with each other versus what they're asking you. Okay. Dawood Smith says, when we declare our nationality, do we use our birth name given by parents or do we use spiritual name?
See, this is there. You're correct on two points. You have to look at in the operations, in the political structure of operations, when people become cognizant that the political platforms that have been put in place are fraudulent and that they've actually been stealing the people's birthright, as people begin to study, they will use the nomen, etc., given to them, or what they would call politically, and what has been called, when you see the corporate operatives, they ask you what your Christian name is, because that's really a political system. Keep in mind, that's a really political system. And then by your mothers unknowingly being tricked with the marriage certificates and the birth certificates, have been listed in the Bureau of Vital Statistics as informers, and that they have sold you to the corporate state. And therefore, the constructs of the capitalist the diminutio that they use for the estates that they create in those corporate names that apply to the stock that they issue in a name that sounds like yours is the stock operations that are listed at 55 Water Street. However, as you begin to become cognate, you would do trade business in those corporate names, which are not you. But as you graduate in your consciousness and your civic capacity and in your adeptship, both spiritually and politically, logically, you would deal with the science, etc., or of the four gates, and start finding out the truth of your makeup and your constitution, and take on what is often called your holy name or your spiritual names. Not unlike you see Noble Drew Ali, you see Timothy Drew, Noble Drew Ali, and then you see Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali. Study that so you can have a comprehension of what I just said to you. Also, when you look at another more Elijah Poole Bey, also known as Elijah Muhammad, you would see when people become conscious somewhat of Islam and some of their Moorish history, they will get an X. And then when they graduate and learn a little bit more, the X's drop, and then they would take on one of the titles. As an example, a good friend of mine, Muhammad Ali. Same principle.
Sister Tia says, ask if you could speak to the brothers and sisters in the Bay Islands regarding the importance of proclaiming their nationality, and can you speak? Oh, yes. And can you speak on Empress Earthy's death?
Yes.
For our island people.
Yeah. Now keep in mind that the hybrids killed Sister Earthy. I'm going to say that right on out.
Yes.
Period. For all of the family at the islands, I want you all, and Sister Tia, do a printout on land and all the aspects of land so that everyone has a clarity that land does not just include the aggregate soil, but it also includes hereditament, corporal and incorporeal, liberties, rights, and inheritances which are at issue. And keep in mind, Sister Eartha, as well as Sister Tia, have been battling sincerely for years for restoration of a state. I also want you all to study reversion of estate. And the concepts that are embodied therein should be the state of mind of all of you. And when we come together, our discussions should be competently within that realm of both information, dispensation, and activities. And I think that would answer a lot of questions, as well as the fact that all your rights and properties, etc., should be put into trust to put a fence between yourself and the members of the Roman Curia who have been falsely claiming our estates. And that would be very helpful along the way. And while that is taking place, the rest of the nations of the earth are ceasing to trade with the private Federal Reserve notes of the Roman Curia members and are ceasing and reducing heavily their buying and transferring into their reserve any U.S. Treasury bonds, and particularly those bonds have been set up since 1861-62 to back the U.S. corporation debt, and this is what they've been operating on. So if we focus ourselves in those areas and work hard to become more and more competent, things will start unraveling as they should, and make the corruption of the occupying forces of the hybrid Europeans less effective in destroying and genociding our people, which are key to many of the arguments Sister Eartha had been talking about. The battle is not up just because she's physically gone, for she is still with us in spirit.
Right. And I just want to say that to those in the Bay Islands, that I had the privilege of Sister Earthy and Sister Tia being here in my home for a month, and it was a beautiful time. And she painted, she cooked, and she did all kinds of wonderful things. And I will absolutely never ever forget her. So I want you to know she's a beautiful soul. And as Grand Sheik said, she remains with you now even more.
Yes.
In spirit.
But the battle don't end. Now, many of you, brothers and sisters on the islands, and remember, collectively, the islands are